9 years ago, my parents callously walked out of my milestone birthday celebration because my older, golden child sister dramatically faked a medical emergency. They expected me to pay the massive, exorbitant restaurant bill and quietly fade into the pathetic background like I always did. Instead, I paid the massive check, walked out of their toxic lives, and spent the next entire decade ruthlessly building a financial empire they knew nothing about. I am Sloane, 35 years old, and until this miserable morning, my pristine sun-drenched corner office in downtown Chicago was an absolute sanctuary free from my highly family. Sign the power of attorney right now, or I will have the building security forcefully throw you out of your own firm. My mother, Catherine, shrieked hysterically as she slammed her $10,000 designer handbag onto my polished mahogany desk. The heavy impact knocked over my expensive iced latte, sending a dark wave of brown liquid spilling directly over a thick stack of highly confidential forensic audit files. I did not even flinch. I slowly, calmly reached for a pristine box of tissues, maintaining dead, unblinking eye contact with the arrogant woman who had not bothered to call me in nearly an entire decade. "You are trespassing, Mother," I said carefully, meticulously dabbing the dark moisture away from the edge of the sensitive documents. "And the building security works for me, considering my private firm owns the top 3 floors of this massive rise." Brenda, my loyal executive assistant, hovered nervously at the glass door, her hand resting hesitantly on the silent panic button. I gave her a subtle, barely perceptible shake of my head, silently signaling her to stand down. I wanted to hear what kind of unhinged delusion had brought my family to my secure doorstep after all these silent years. A loud, mocking laugh echoed sharply through the quiet room. Terence, my brother-in-law, stepped arrogantly out from behind my mother. He was wearing an flashy bespoke suit, an imported silk tie, and an expression of pure, unadulterated arrogance. He had married my sister Penelope 10 years ago and was immediately, generously gifted the chief operating officer position at my father's logistics company, despite having zero professional experience in supply chain management. "Do not play big shot with us, Sloane," Terence sneered, pacing arrogantly around my massive office as if he were casually evaluating the expensive furniture for a cheap garage sale. "We know you are just a glorified, highly pathetic bookkeeper. Your father specifically sent us to immediately collect what rightfully belongs to this family." I casually tossed the soiled tissues directly into the wastebasket. "A glorified bookkeeper. Is that exactly what Penelope tells you between her faked panic attacks and staging meaningless photo shoots for social media? Do not dare speak about your sister that disrespectful way." Catherine snapped, her Botoxed face turning an angry shade of red. "Penelope has severe documented anxiety. You are just bitter because she actually has a beautiful life, a successful husband, and you are sitting here alone in a sterile office. You have always been insanely jealous of her." I leaned back slowly in my ergonomic leather chair, casually crossing my arms. "Jealous, right? What exactly brings you to my private office after 9 long years of absolute, dead silence? Did you finally run out of vulnerable people to maliciously manipulate in Connecticut?" Terence stepped forward, placing both of his heavy hands flat on my mahogany desk and leaning into my personal space. "Listen to me incredibly closely," Terence hissed, his breath reeking of expensive espresso. "The logistics company currently has a very slight cash flow issue right now. We urgently need the deed to the Aspen cabin your grandfather foolishly left you. It is a highly valuable family asset, and we desperately need to leverage it for a massive commercial bridge loan today." I casually stared at his heavy wrist, a slight cash flow issue. I asked, slowly raising a single, highly skeptical eyebrow. "You are wearing a solid gold, highly imported luxury watch, Terence. And Mother, that incredibly ostentatious bag you just used to vandalize my pristine workspace costs significantly more than the college tuition you flatly refused to pay for me." I paused, letting the heavy, uncomfortable truth settle over them. "Yet here you both are, barging into my private business, pathetically begging for a property you haven't set evatanfitin for over 10 long years. Catherine slapped her manicured hand on the desk again. You highly ungrateful, miserable brat. We generously gave you life. We lovingly raised you. You owe this family your absolute, unwavering loyalty. Penelope desperately needs that property to build her new holistic wellness retreat anyway. She deserves it after everything she has tragically been through. I smoothly picked up a dry towel and carefully wiped the absolute last drop of coffee from my expensive silver pen holder. My grandfather left that beautiful cabin specifically to me, Mother. Do you know exactly why? Because he knew if he left it to you, or Dad, you would immediately, selfishly sell it to fund Penelope's massive shopping habits, or desperately cover up whatever massive financial mess Terence arrogantly created this week. Terence's sharp jaw clenched. The polished, manufactured facade of the elite executive slipped for a tiny fraction of a second, quickly replaced by a highly dangerous flash of genuine, unhinged rage. He recovered quickly, sharply adjusting his incredibly expensive cuffs. We are not asking for a pathetic handout loan, we are demanding family equity, Terence barked. Your father proudly built his company from the absolute ground up. I am running operations now, and we are expanding rapidly. The massive bank just needs additional collateral to secure the new fleet of trucks. The Aspen cabin is just sitting empty. You are going to sign the transfer right now, or my highly expensive legal team will file an aggressive injunction against your little accounting business by noon. I looked casually around my spacious, incredibly luxurious corner office, taking in the sweeping, panoramic view of the massive Chicago skyline. My little accounting business, the sheer breathtaking delusion it took to confidently walk into a multi-million-dollar corporate auditing firm and call it a little business was astounding. But that was my family's specialty, unwavering delusion. They only saw what they desperately wanted to see. To them, I was still the invisible, pathetic middle child, the convenient scapegoat they could bully into submission whenever they desperately needed a quick, desperate fix for their own catastrophic mistakes. You cannot file an injunction against my firm for a highly personal property dispute, Terence, I stated calmly, unbothered. You would know that basic legal fact if you actually went to a legitimate business school instead of just marrying into a fake job title. Catherine gasped, clutching her chest in a highly dramatic gesture that mirrored her highly manipulative golden child daughter. How dare you speak to your successful brother-in-law that disrespectful way? He is a level executive. He is out there ruthlessly making multi-million-dollar deals while you lazily sit here playing with cheap calculators. You have always been irredeemably selfish, Sloane. Just like when you ruined Penelope's third birthday dinner by refusing to cover the bill after she was tragically rushed to the emergency room. I felt a cold, incredibly icy smile stretch slowly across my face. She had minor indigestion from wearing a designer dress, 2 sizes too small, Mother, I replied cleanly. And you all callously walked out, leaving me alone at a highly exclusive Michelin star restaurant on my 26th birthday, with a massive $4,000 tab. I quietly paid it, and I never spoke to you again until you barged in here today, demanding I blindly hand over a massive real estate asset to cover your massive mismanagement. We are not mismanaging anything. Terence barked, his loud voice echoing harshly off the glass walls. Your father's company is stronger than ever, but business requires liquidity, and you are selfishly hoarding a dead asset. Penelope is desperately waiting down in the luxury car right now, and she cannot handle the intense stress of your stubbornness. She is on the verge of a breakdown because of your selfishness. I am not signing anything, I said cleanly, locking eyes directly with him. You can take your empty, highly pathetic threats and show yourselves out before I call security. Terence reached into the inner silk pocket of his custom suit jacket and pulled out a folded legal document. He slammed it down on top of my sensitive audit files, smoothing out the creases with force. He reached into his other pocket, pulled out a silver pen, and slid it across the polished wood of my desk until it hit my keyboard. He smirked, a highly chilling, calculating expression that made my skin crawl. Your father's massive company needs a bridge loan. You owe us for raising you, sign it right now, or we sue you for elder financial abuse. I stared unbothered at the heavy silver pen resting against my keyboard. I smoothly picked it up, feeling the cold metal between my fingers, and met Terrence's smug, highly gaze. I let the expensive pen drop. It hit the mahogany desk with a highly sharp clack that echoed loudly in the silent office. Sue me for elder financial abuse. I repeated the words slowly, letting the sheer absurdity of the threat hang in the air. That is an interesting, risky legal strategy, Terrence. Tell me, does your priced corporate counsel plan to mention the time this family deliberately stranded a 26-year-old alone at a Michelin-starred restaurant with a $4,000 tab? My mother scoffed loudly, crossing her jeweled arms over her chest. Are we really doing this again, Sloane? Are you seriously bringing up a highly meaningless dinner from 9 long years ago, when your sister is currently sitting in a luxury car downstairs practically hyperventilating from the intense stress you are causing her? I stood up slowly from my ergonomic chair and casually leaned across the heavy desk. It was not just a meaningless dinner, Mother, it was supposed to be my milestone birthday celebration. But you and Dad decided it would be more cost-effective to combine it with Penelope's 30th. And isn't it fascinating how Penelope's mysterious heart palpitations flared up the second the waiter respectfully brought out the check? Catherine slammed her hands on the heavy edge of my desk, her made-up face twisting with pure, unhinged rage. Your sister was having a legitimate, dangerous medical emergency. She could not breathe. The trained paramedic said she was on the verge of a cardiac event, and you stood there complaining about a pathetic piece of paper. You are a cold, selfish monster who only cares about hoarded money. She did not have a cardiac event, I shot back smoothly, keeping my voice dangerously quiet. She had a panic attack, because the waiter accidentally wished me a happy birthday first. And she could not stand safely sharing the spotlight for 30 measly seconds. The expensive hospital discharged her an hour later, with a simple prescription for antacids. Meanwhile, you and Dad hurried out behind her stretcher, leaving me alone at a table for 20. I stared directly into her eyes, letting all the cold fury of the past decade sharpen my words. I sat there for 2 agonizing hours, calling both of your phones, while the restaurant manager hovered over my shoulder. I had to drain my entire emergency savings account to cover the massive cost of Penelope's vintage champagne and Terrence's imported Wagyu steaks. Terrence groaned, rolling his eyes dramatically. We did not come here for a highly pathetic therapy session about your exaggerated childhood trauma, Sloane. We came for the massive deed. Your grandfather was senile when he foolishly left that beautiful Aspen cabin to you. Everyone knows it was meant for Penelope. Sign the massive transfer document right now. I looked down casually at the sloppy legal document Terrence had smoothed out over my files. I could easily see the highly sloppy legal drafting from a mile away. The spacing was off, the heavy notary seal looked highly questionable. They were intensely desperate, bleeding cash, and trying to blindly patch a sinking corporate ship strictly with a personal asset they had no legal right to touch. You desperately want this forged deed so badly because Dad's logistics company is failing, I said cleanly, shifting my gaze smoothly between them. I read the classified industry reports. You lost 2 shipping contracts last quarter. Terrence, a pathetic bridge loan will not save you. It will just delay the inevitable bankruptcy. Terrence's confident posture instantly faltered. A massive flash of genuine, unadulterated panic crossed his heavy face before he quickly masked it with aggressive, defensive posturing. You do not know anything about level logistics. We are expanding. We are acquiring new assets. The bank just needs a temporary collateral boost to finalize the paperwork. Now, pick up the pen and sign it, or I swear to you, I will ruthlessly make sure your professional reputation in the city is destroyed by tomorrow morning. My mother enthusiastically nodded vigorously in deep agreement. He will do it, Sloane. Do not test us. Your highly powerful father is already furious that we even had to come down to this sterile little cubicle to beg you to do the right thing. You owe this family. We clothed you, we fed you, we generously allowed you to live under our highly expensive roof. Allowed me to live under your roof? I chuckled softly, shaking my head at the boundless entitlement. You mean the roof, where Penelope got the master suite remodel, while I slept in the drafty basement room, next to the noisy furnace. The roof where my impressive college acceptance letters mysteriously went missing from the mail, simply because Penelope did not want me attending a significantly better university than her. Stop acting like a pathetic victim. Catherine shrieked loudly, her voice pitching enough to actually make the glass walls of my office audibly rattle. Penelope is out there building an empire as a successful lifestyle influencer. She has brand deals, she has millions of adoring followers. All you have is a boring, pathetic desk job and an attitude. Now give us the deed. I looked down casually at the forged document again. I slowly traced the edge of the paper with my index finger, feigning hesitation. I knew what I was going to do, but they needed to believe they were winning. They needed to feel that addictive rush of power they had thrived on my life. I am not signing this forged document here, I said cleanly, my voice devoid of any emotion. Terence slammed his heavy fist on the desk. You will sign it right now, or we are going to court. I held up a hand, silencing him. I said, I am not signing it here. I looked into my mother's furious, made-up eyes. Tomorrow is your and Dad's publicized 40th wedding anniversary, isn't it? The expensive gala at the sprawling Connecticut estate. 200 elite guests, a catered dinner, the social elite will be there. Catherine immediately narrowed her eyes, instantly highly suspicious. What exactly does our highly important anniversary have to do with this? If you want the massive deed to the Aspen cabin, you will invite me to the highly publicized anniversary dinner tomorrow night. I stated clearly, I will bring the authentic original property deed and the heavy transfer paperwork. I will sign it there in person in front of the entire elite family. Terence let out a loud, victorious bark of laughter. He looked at my mother and smirked. Unbelievable. She just wants a pathetic invitation to the exclusive big party. After all this grandstanding, she just wants a free plate of expensive caviar and a desperate chance to rub elbows with our wealthy friends. Catherine sighed, looking at me with pure, unadulterated disgust. You always were pathetic, Sloane, desperately begging for an invitation to a party you do not belong at. Fine, wear something presentable. Do not embarrass us and bring the deed. If you try to back out, your powerful father will have his lawyers seize your business assets by Monday morning. I will be there, I promised smoothly, picking up the heavy silver pen and casually handing it strictly back to Terence. 8 o'clock, strictly sharp. Terence snatched the pen from my hand, his chest puffed out with pride. Do not be late, pathetic bookkeeper. I watched them turn and walk out of my office. Catherine's designer heels clicked sharply against the hardwood floor, and Terence strutted beside her like a conquering king. They walked past my executive assistant without a single pathetic glance, convinced they had just bullied me into handing over a multi-million-dollar property for the cheap price of a dinner invitation. Brenda stepped safely into the office as soon as the elevator doors closed behind them. She looked safely at the spilled coffee, then at me. Should I call building security to make sure they actually left the premises? No need, Brenda, I said smoothly, pulling a highly fresh stack of financial dossiers from my locked drawer. They are gone, but do me a heavy favor and cancel my afternoon meetings. I need strictly to finalize the highly complex corporate debt acquisition for tomorrow night. She nodded safely, a knowing, highly subtle smile playing on her glossed lips. They have no idea what is coming, do they? I looked safely out the heavy window at the sprawling city below. Not a single pathetic clue. The next evening, the massive wrought iron gates of my parents' sprawling Connecticut estate swung open. The long, winding driveway was a chaotic sea of luxury vehicles, with frantic valet attendants rushing back and forth under the soft, elegant glow of gas lanterns. I handed over the keys to my understated Cezanne and walked calmly up the sweeping marble steps. The heavy oak front doors were propped open, leaking the sounds of an elite string quartet and the polite clinking of crystal glasses into the crisp, cool night air. I smoothly adjusted the lapels of my tailored navy blazer, patted the thick leather portfolio securely tucked under my arm, and stepped confidently inside the absolute lion's den. The main foyer spilled into the grand ballroom, which was packed with New England socialites, powerful corporate partners, and wealthy family friends who had spent the last 9 years pretending I did not exist. I had barely taken 10 steps past the coat check before the booming theatrical voice of my father echoed across the room. "Look exactly who finally decided to show up," Richard bellowed loudly. The soft music seemed to audibly dip. Dozens of highly manicured heads turned sharply in my direction. My father marched purposefully toward me, with a heavy highball glass of scotch firmly in one hand. He wore a highly summed tuxedo, his silver hair immaculately coiffed. He did not offer a warm hug, he did not offer a polite handshake. Instead, he positioned himself so his wealthy, elite friends could clearly hear every single word. "Still single, Sloane?" he asked loudly, his voice dripping with faux pity. "Still pushing meaningless papers in a little cubicle somewhere? I told your mother it was a mistake to invite you. You always look so miserable at these elite events," but Terence generously insisted. "Speaking of which, have you politely congratulated your successful brother-in-law yet? Terence just proudly closed a $5 million logistics deal for the company this morning. What have you accomplished this week?" A few of his wealthy, obnoxious golf buddies chuckled arrogantly into their expensive drinks. 9 long years ago, that exact kind of public, highly calculated humiliation would have sent me running desperately for the nearest exit with hot tears streaming in my eyes. Tonight I just smiled a slow, cold smile. "I have accomplished quite a bit, Dad," I replied cleanly, my voice carrying effortlessly over the silent crowd. "And I am not pushing papers in a cubicle. I own my entire firm. As for Terrence's massive $5 million deal, I will be sure to congratulate him as soon as the ink is actually permanently dry on those highly questionable contracts, assuming the massive funding actually clears. Of course." My faint-hog smug smile visibly faltered for a tiny fraction of a second. Before he could frantically formulate a desperate response to my complete, terrifying lack of intimidation, the crowd actively parted. Penelope made her grand, highly theatrical entrance. She descended the sweeping curved staircase strictly like she was arrogantly accepting an Academy Award. She wore a floor-length emerald silk gown, and her neck and wrists were draped in massive diamond jewelry that easily, comfortably cost significantly more than a starter home. She floated arrogantly over to my father, linking her arm tightly through his, and looked me up and down with exaggerated, highly theatrical disgust. "Sloane," Penelope sighed loudly, shaking her head, "a basic navy blazer to an elite anniversary gala? Really? Could you not afford to rent something appropriate? You look exactly like you are about to sell us a cheap life insurance policy. I could have lent you a dress if you were struggling that much." "I am very comfortable in exactly what I proudly own, Penelope," I said cleanly. "And considering exactly why you dragged me here tonight, I figured strict business attire was the absolute most appropriate, accurate choice." Catherine magically materialized from the silent crowd, flanking my highly sister like a bodyguard. Terence was right behind her, his eyes immediately darting to the thick leather portfolio tucked under my arm. "Do not start a massive fight, Sloane," Catherine snapped. "Your sister has been under immense stress planning this party for us. Now give Terence the heavy paperwork. We have important investors waiting in the study, and we need to wrap up this Aspen business before the massive bank closes on the West Coast." Penelope clapped her hands together, the massive diamonds catching the light. "Yes, give it here. Terence and I have the most amazing vision for the Aspen cabin. I am turning it into an exclusive, highly lucrative wellness retreat for my millions of followers. We are going to knock down that ugly rustic frame and build massive glass meditation pods. It is going to be incredibly lucrative. You honestly should thank me for taking that dusty old shack off your hands. I looked at my delusional sister, taking in the sheer audacity of her demands. You want to demolish our grandfather's beautiful cabin so you can build glass meditation pods. It is called massive vision, Sloane, Terrence interjected, stepping incredibly, uncomfortably close to me. Something you lack. Hand over the deed, we are wasting valuable time. I tightened my firm grip on the portfolio. I told you I would bring the deed. Terrence, I never said I was going to hand it over. The second I walked through the door. We are going to sit down like adults, review the terms of this transfer, and discuss why the company is so desperate for my grandfather's property that you had to ambush my office yesterday. The heavy air in the grand room grew thick. My father stepped forward, his highly face turning an angry shade of deep crimson. You do not dictate terms in my house, you highly girl. Richard bellowed. You will hand over that folder right now, or I will have you forcibly removed from this massive property. Try it, I challenged him, my tone deadpan, but if I walk out that door, the massive deed leaves with me, and your pathetic bridge loan evaporates instantly. I highly doubt your wealthy investors in the study will be thrilled to hear that you lost your only viable piece of collateral because you threw a complete temper tantrum in the middle of an elite gala. I watched the brutal realization hit them. I was not the scared, submissive 26-year-old scapegoat anymore. I was holding the leash and they were cornered. Penelope's wide eyes darted frantically. Between me, her sweating husband, and the wealthy elite guests who were openly staring at our family drama, she realized she was losing control of the narrative. Her demands were not working. Her pathetic insults were bouncing off me. She needed to regain the upper hand, and she only had one weapon left in her pathetic playbook. Suddenly, Penelope gasped, incredibly loudly. She grabbed the massive diamond necklace at her throat, as if it were choking her. Her eyes widened in highly manufactured terror. She stumbled backward, knocking over a massive tray of crystal champagne flutes on an passing waiter. Crystals shattered across the polished marble floor. My heart! Penelope wheezed, her breathing becoming highly dramatic, shallow, and erratic. She clutched her chest with both hands. It is doing it again, the palpitations. Penelope, Catherine weaved, rushing forward. Give her space, everyone, give her space. Penelope swayed, highly dramatically, and collapsed into Terrence's waiting arms, making absolute sure her expensive emerald dress draped elegantly over his shoes. She pointed a trembling manicured finger directly at my face. She is doing it again, Penelope cried out, timed tears streaming down her contoured cheeks. She is stressing me out on purpose. She wants to kill me, make her stop. My heart, I cannot breathe. The grand ballroom devolved into instant, chaotic pandemonium. The string quartet stopped playing mid-note, the abrupt silence replaced by the heavy sound of wealthy socialites gasping in absolute horror. Waiters froze in their tracks, trays of champagne hovering dangerously in the air. Penelope lay draped across the polished marble floor, her emerald gown fanned out around her, like a highly tragic heroine in an incredibly cheap daytime soap opera. She clutched her chest with manicured fingers, taking loud, jagged gulps of air that echoed off the high-vaulted ceilings. Terrence dropped to one knee beside her, playing the pathetic part of the devoted, terrified husband. He rubbed her shoulders, shouting for someone to get her some water. Catherine shoved her way through a cluster of shocked guests, her face pale with highly manufactured terror. She threw herself onto the floor next to Penelope, stroking my sister's hair and glaring up at me with absolute, unhinged venom. You are killing your sister. Catherine screamed, her voice cracking with highly hysterical panic. Look at what you are doing to her. Her heart cannot take this kind of abuse. Give Terrence the deed right now so she can calm down. I stood my ground, my hands resting lightly on the leather portfolio tucked under my arm. I looked down at the highly pathetic scene unfolding at my feet. It was a masterclass in massive manipulation, a highly rehearsed routine Penelope had perfected over 3 decades. Anytime the attention shifted away from her, anytime she faced the absolute word no, a sudden, highly mysterious medical emergency would conveniently strike. 9 long years ago it cost me my dignity and my savings. Tonight, it was just pathetic. Terence sprang to his feet, abandoning his supposedly dying wife on the floor. He closed the distance between us in 2 long, aggressive strides. He was a broad, imposing man, and he used every inch of his height to try and intimidate me. He stepped so incredibly close, I could smell the expensive scotch on his breath, and the nervous sweat radiating through his custom suit. "Do not just stand there staring at her," Terence barked, his face inches from mine. "You caused this. You are stressing her out with your ridiculous stubbornness. Hand over the portfolio, Sloane. I will take the deed, we will get the transfer witnessed, and you can leave before you do any more massive damage to this family." He reached out his heavy hand, grabbing the edge of my leather portfolio. He tried to yank it away from me, assuming I would simply let go in the face of intense public pressure. He assumed the old Sloane was still in charge, the quiet girl who would do anything to avoid a massive scene. I locked my absolute grip on the portfolio and stepped directly into his personal space, refusing to yield a single microscopic inch. "If you try to rip my personal property from my hands again, I will physically break your fingers," I stated, my voice low, steady, and devoid of fear. Terence froze. He blinked, clearly shocked by the icy, terrifying authority in my tone. For a second, he looked at my father, who was standing behind the crowd, desperately trying to manage the highly panicked whispers of the elite guests. Catherine wailed again, her highly theatrical cries growing much louder as she cradled Penelope. "Richard, do something, call an ambulance. Tell Sloane to sign the massive papers. Penelope's chest is tight. She is having a massive heart attack." I sighed, stepping around Terence's frame. I walked calmly toward my dramatic mother and fake sister. The crowd of wealthy onlookers stepped far back, giving me a wide berth. They expected me to drop to my knees and tearfully apologize. They expected me to surrender the deed to magically save my sister's pathetic life. Instead, I crouched down right next to Penelope. Her eyes were tightly squeezed shut. Her glossed lips parted as she performed a series of dramatic, shallow pants. Her expensive, diamond-encrusted Apple Watch gleamed under the chandelier light, strapped tightly to her left wrist. Without uttering a single word, I reached out and grabbed her wrist. Penelope's eyes snapped wide open in sheer, unadulterated panic. She tried to yank her arm away, letting out a highly sharp squeal of protest. "What are you doing? Get away from me." My heavy heart, "Hold still, Penelope," I commanded, my grip like a vise. "You are having a medical emergency. We need to check your vitals." I tapped the pristine screen of her smartwatch. The highly advanced biometric display lit up immediately, tracking the exact data it had been silently recording all evening. I did not merely look at it. I read the absolute numbers aloud, projecting my highly clear voice so every single highly wealthy socialite, corporate partner, and family friend in the ballroom could hear me with crystal clarity. "Heart rate is exactly 72 beats strictly per minute," I announced. "Blood oxygen level is exactly 99 absolute %." I dropped her wrist. It hit the polished marble floor with a highly soft thud. I stood up, casually smoothing the pristine front of my navy blazer, and looked down at my sister. "For someone allegedly having a massive cardiac event, you have the normal resting vitals of a sleeping toddler." A collective, stunned silence fell over the grand ballroom. The elite guests stared, their mouths slightly agape. The hushed, panicked whispers ceased. You could literally hear a pin drop. The brutal realization washed over the elite crowd in real time. There was no dangerous medical emergency. There was no heart attack. It was a pathetic temper tantrum, thrown by a 39-year-old woman wearing millions of expensive dollars in diamonds. Penelope's face flushed a deep, mottled, ugly red. The fake, highly dramatic gasping stopped instantly. The pathetic illusion was shattered, obliterated by undeniable, highly hard biometrics data. Furious and humiliated, she frantically scrambled to her feet, smoothing down her ruined emerald gown. She glared at me, her highly fake chest heaving, but this exact time with highly genuine, unadulterated rage. Catherine scrambled up beside her, looking frantically at the highly elite guests, trying to somehow salvage the destroyed situation. The incredibly expensive watch must be highly broken. Catherine stammered in pure panic. It is a highly faulty reading. Absolutely nobody bought it. The absolute damage was permanently done. Terence, realizing his highly pathetic wife had just been exposed as a highly manipulative fraud, and his only desperate chance at securing the massive deed was slipping away, lost whatever tiny remaining highly manufactured composure he had. He stormed toward me, his heavy fists clenched at his custom sides. He pointed a shaking finger directly at my face, angry spit highly literally flying from his trembling lips as he shouted, "You have no right to physically touch my fragile wife. You have no right to come into this elite house and humiliate her. You think you are so smart with your pathetic little meaningless numbers and your stupid portfolio. You are nothing. You are just a jealous, broke, pathetic accountant who cannot physically stand the undeniable fact that we are actually successful." I did not take a single step backward. I looked at his shaking aggressive finger, then highly calmly up at his highly enraged, profusely sweating fake face. A slow, highly chilling smile spread across my highly confident lips. "I am a highly successful forensic accountant, Terence," I agreed smoothly, my calm voice echoing musically through the silent grand room. "Which is exactly why I audited your massive $5 million corporate logistics deal." The rich color drained from Terrence's face so fast, he literally looked physically ill. The jut of his jaw dissolved into a slack-jawed, terrified stare. He opened his dry mouth to desperately speak, but no sound came out. I did not graciously give him the tiny chance to desperately recover or highly frantically spin another massive pathetic lie. I turned my confident back on him and purposefully walked toward the media wall at the far end of the silent ballroom. A custom 80-inch smart TV was currently seamlessly looping a sickeningly artificially sweet slideshow of my parents over the last 40 years. Photos of them arrogantly toasting on expensive yachts, smiling on elite ski slopes, and posing with Penelope filled the screen. I was conspicuously absent from every single frame. It was the perfect canvas for my final presentation. I pulled my incredibly sleek digital tablet securely from my leather portfolio and highly confidently tapped the screen mirroring icon. The giant expensive television loudly blinked. The highly manufactured image of my toxic parents, clinking vintage champagne flutes in Paris, instantly vanished, replaced by a stark, highly resolution complex spreadsheet titled Risinol Editsuer. A massive collective terrified gasp rippled through the highly elite crowd of wealthy socialites and massive business partners. The polite, elegant clinking of heavy crystal champagne glasses ceased. My powerful father marched forward, his face flushed with a dangerous mix of confusion and unhinged fury. "What do you think you are doing, Sloane?" Richard loudly demanded, angrily waving his expensive Scotch glass at the screen. "Turn that garbage off immediately. This is an exclusive anniversary elite party, not a corporate boardroom. You are embarrassing your mother in front of our important guests." "You arrogantly wanted to talk about business, Dad," I replied smoothly, my confident voice projecting clearly across the silent room. "You arrogantly wanted to mock my successful career and praise Terence for proudly closing a logistics deal. I think your wealthy investors, who are physically standing right here in this room, might want to clearly see what kind of fraudulent deals your trusted chief operating officer is proudly closing." I highly confidently tapped my sleek tablet. The complex spreadsheet on the screen smoothly shifted to a detailed series of classified corporate bank wire transfers. Red arrows highlighted sums of untraceable cash leaving my father's corporate accounts. "This is your praised $5 million deal," I announced, stepping to the side so everyone had a pristine, clear view. Terrence arrogantly claimed he proudly cured as a supply chain corporate contract with a new overseas vendor. He arrogantly presented you with forged financial projections, fake corporate invoices, and a fabricated corporate profile. And because you blindly trust manipulative him, you arrogantly gave him authorization to release the funds without a single secondary review. Terrence desperately lunged forward, his terrified face gleaming highly with a sudden thick, heavy layer of cold sweat. "Turn it off," he screamed, his panicked voice cracking in sheer panic. He shoved past a terrified waiter, nearly knocking him over. "She is highly maliciously lying. These highly confidential documents are highly maliciously forged. This is highly illegal corporate espionage." Richard rapidly called the armed security. "She illegally hacked my private computer." I smoothly swiped directly to the next massive slide, ignoring his highly frantic, pathetic outburst. "I did not illegally hack anything, Terrence. Your sloppy amateur accounting left a paper trail a literal mile long. You arrogantly routed those stolen funds through 3 separate offshore shell companies. You arrogantly thought creating fake dummy invoices for non-existent shipping crates would successfully hide the cash flow corporate deficit, but you forgot to scrub the internal routing numbers from the origin bank." I confidently pointed to the massive screen, where 3 distinct dummy company names clearly appeared, all highly highlighted in bright, undeniable neon yellow. Apex Global Solutions, Vertex Holdings, and Summit Logistics. All 3 fake limited liability companies were registered in Delaware less than 6 long months ago, the time the cash flow issues at Dad's company began. Richard stopped walking, his polished, custom leather shoes loudly squeaked to a terrified halt on the polished marble floor. He utterly stared at the screen, his expensive Scotch glass trembling in his tight grip. The anger in his eyes was rapidly being permanently replaced by a terrifying hollow, agonizing dread. He was a seasoned corporate businessman. He knew what a fraudulent shell company visibly looked like. He knew what a bleeding balance sheet meant. I could literally see the highly prominent wealthy investors in the grand room exchanging highly alarmed, furious wealthy glances. "Those are legitimate vendors," Terrence hysterically shouted, his panicked voice loudly echoing shrilly over the frantic whispers of the terrified crowd. "They are legitimate overseas vendors. We are acquiring new fleets. You have no pathetic idea how level corporate expansion actually works, you pathetic glorified bookkeeper. You are simply just desperately trying to maliciously ruin my pristine reputation because your own lonely life is a miserable, pathetic failure." Catherine frantically rushed directly to Terrence's side, grabbing his bespoke arm highly protectively. She pointed a shaking manicured finger at me. "How dare you maliciously accuse him of this, Sloane? He is loyal family. He is desperately saving your important father's business, while you lazily sit around maliciously looking for pathetic ways to maliciously ruin us. You are maliciously doing this simply because you are insanely jealous of Penelope." Penelope, magically recovered from her highly theatrical near-death medical experience, strutted forward, her massive emerald designer dress angrily swishing around her highly expensive ankles. "You are highly deranged, Sloane. Terrence works 80-hour massive weeks for this highly elite family. You are just highly furious that Dad trusts him significantly more than you." "He is not saving the business, Mother," I stated flatly, ignoring my delusional sister. "He is maliciously bleeding it dry, and Dad blindly trusts him simply because Dad desperately wanted a successful son, not an intelligent accountant daughter who actually knows how to read a basic financial ledger statement." I confidently tapped my sleek screen one absolute final time. The stark image on the television slowly zoomed in on the classified corporate registration confidential documents for the 3 fraudulent Delaware LLCs. The classified text magnified until the fine print was impossible for anyone in the grand room to miss. The incredibly grand room felt as though all the remaining oxygen had been sucked out of it. I looked at Terrence. He was hyperventilating, his chest heaving under his expensive bespoke suit. His panicked eyes frantically darted wildly toward the oak grand doors, frantically calculating his pathetic chances of successfully making a desperate run for it. "If these are legitimate corporate vendors, Terence," I said, letting my calm voice drop to a highly lethal quiet calm, "why are all three fraudulent LLCs registered under the exact identical name Beatrice Vance?" The massive grand ballroom went dead silent. The absolute silence was heavy, suffocating, and crushing. Beatrice Vance was Terence's mother's maiden name. "You did not close a $5 million corporate deal," I continued smoothly, locking confident eyes with my devastated father before turning my relentless icy gaze back to my profusely sweating, terrified brother-in-law. "You embezzled $4.2 massive million." The absolute, dead silence in the grand ballroom lasted exactly 3 agonizingly long seconds before Penelope shattered it. I expected her to turn on Terence. I expected her to hysterically scream at the deceptive man she proudly married. The manipulative man who had just been exposed for stealing millions of dollars from her own elite father, simply to fund his lavish, fake lifestyle. Any rational person would have demanded an immediate explanation from the unmasked criminal standing right next to them. But Penelope was not highly rational. She was the golden child, and in her highly warped, delusional reality, the innocent person confidently holding the heavy mirror was always the malicious one to blame purely for the ugly, undeniable reflection. Penelope whirled around, her expensive emerald silk gown whipping around her designer ankles. She did not look at Terence. She looked directly at me, her face contorted into a terrifying mask of pure, unhinged hysterical hysteria. Fake tears instantly began to dramatically stream down her contoured cheeks, ruining her pristine, expensive makeup. "How dare you do this to my successful husband?" Penelope shrieked, pointing an accusing diamond-clad manicured finger right at my calm face. "You are simply, just maliciously trying to ruin my marriage, simply because nobody ever wants you." I stared at her, genuinely astounded by the sheer breathtaking magnitude of her delusion. "He stole $4 million from Dad, Penelope," I stated smoothly. "The verified bank records are literally projected on a 30-foot media screen right behind you. The stolen money he uses to buy you those expensive diamonds was siphoned out of our father's secure retirement corporate accounts. I do not care about your stupid complex spreadsheets." She sobbed, stomping her expensive designer foot on the polished marble floor like a petulant, angry toddler. "You have always been insanely jealous of me. You have always hated Terence simply because he is successfully rich and charming, and you are just a miserable, lonely, pathetic spinster. You maliciously fabricated all of this fake garbage simply just to embarrass me publicly in front of our elite wealthy friends." The wealthy elite guests were openly staring now. Some were frantically whispering behind their manicured hands, while wealthy others were slowly, desperately inching toward the grand exit, desperate to safely escape the catastrophic corporate fallout. Terence stood paralyzed. The posturing corporate executive who had threatened me in my secure office just 24 short hours ago had magically vanished. He cowardly hid behind his hysterical, crying wife, letting her fight his pathetic criminal battles. Catherine stepped into my clear line of confident sight, physically shielding Terence and Penelope from my piercing gaze. Her manicured eyes were wild, frantically darting around the crowded grand room as she realized the elite social Connecticut society were openly watching her fake family publicly implode. She desperately needed a manufactured narrative, and she needed it instantly. "It is just a legal complex tax corporate loophole," Catherine desperately announced loudly, projecting her panicked voice so the important nearby wealthy investors could definitely hear her. She grabbed Terence by the bespoke arm, gripping his expensive custom jacket sleeve. "Terence is a brilliant financial innovator. He was simply just legally restructuring the corporate internal assets to successfully minimize our tax corporate burden. It is advanced, brilliant corporate financial strategy." I smoothly let out a highly harsh, disbelieving loud laugh. Embezzling corporate operational funds into fraudulent Delaware offshore shell companies, registered under your pathetic mother-in-law's maiden name, is not a brilliant corporate tax loophole. Mother, I stated cleanly. It is a federal felony crime. It is intentional wire fraud, illegal grand larceny, and corporate financial malfeasance. The powerful FBI does not consider that an advanced corporate strategy. They consider it a punishable 20-year felony. Catherine's Botoxed face flushed a angry red. She marched right up to me, stepping so close I could smell the sharp tang of her expensive designer imported perfume. She lowered her panicked voice to a harsh, venomous, desperate whisper. You listen to me, Sloane. You are going to fix this. You are an intelligent accountant. You know how to quietly move meaningless numbers around. You are going to go into the corporate computer system tonight, and you are going to quietly reclassify all of those wire transfers as legitimate corporate expansion expenses. You will bury this. You will protect your loyal brother-in-law, and you will protect the prestigious family name. You arrogantly want me to commit illegal corporate accounting fraud to cover up his intentional theft? I asked smoothly, making sure my clear voice carried clearly to the shocked surrounding elite crowd. You intensely want me to risk my pristine professional auditing license and my own freedom, so Terrence can keep buying expensive luxury imported sports cars with Dad's stolen money. He is loyal, family, Catherine hissed, her highly manufactured elegant perfect composure fracturing. Family protects highly loyal family. You owe us, Sloane. We highly generously gave you everything. I did not flinch. I did not step back. I looked her dead directly in the highly panicked eye. I owe you nothing. Catherine lost her highly pathetic mind. She slapped the highly polished surface of the nearby cocktail table so incredibly hard, the empty, expensive crystal champagne glasses rattled against the heavy wood. We paid for your expensive college. She hysterically screamed, abandoning her polished society elite persona. We generously clothed you. We generously funded your life. You owe this supportive family your loyalty. The pathetic lie loudly echoed in the grand ballroom. It was the same lie she had proudly told her elite country club wealthy friends for a long decade. The manufactured story of the generous, supportive elite parents who had graciously funded their problematic youngest daughter's elite education, only for that daughter to become distant and ungrateful. For a long, agonizing decade, I had silently swallowed that lie to artificially keep the fake peace. I had painfully bitten my tongue while they proudly took credit for my sheer relentless survival. Absolutely not tonight. I smoothly reached into my leather portfolio. I easily bypassed the thick audit files and the authentic Aspen cabin deed. I smoothly pulled out a thick folded stack of pristine papers held together by a binder clip. It was a certified official bank statement, permanently stamped and officially verified. I slowly, deliberately unfolded it and held it up right in front of my shocked mother's Botoxed face. You didn't pay a single pathetic dime, I stated cleanly, my calm voice cutting through the heavy tension like a sharp shard of cold glass. I paid off my highly $80,000 student massive loans by working brutal graveyard night shifts. Catherine desperately blinked, utterly staring at the highly certified official document. The highly bold, undeniable red stamp loudly indicating an absolute zero remaining balance stared silently back at her. You arrogantly told everyone you generously paid my expensive tuition, I confidently continued, my clear voice rising so the attentive elite room could hear the truth. But the day the tuition bill arrived, you callously told me I had to desperately figure it out myself, simply because Penelope desperately needed an expensive, fully funded European graduation luxury trip to magically find herself. I brutally worked exhausting graveyard night shifts at a greasy diner while taking 18 credit hours a grueling semester. I miserably lived on cheap instant noodles in a freezing studio apartment with no functioning heat while you proudly generously bought Terrence a solid gold luxury watch for his birthday. you never gave me a single, pathetic, single penny. I ruthlessly built my corporate firm, my personal wealth and my untouchable life on my own. Penelope highly dramatically sniffled incredibly loudly, frantically trying to desperately reclaim the shattered victim narrative. Why are you bringing up college? You are just maliciously trying to deflect, because you are a highly terrible sister. I smoothly turned my confident gaze away from my humiliated mother, and confidently looked at my devastated father, who was still utterly staring in horror at the media television screen, displaying his looted corporate bank accounts. I paid my own way, I calmly repeated, tossing the verified bank statements onto the cocktail table. But speaking of financial debts, let us move on to the real reason you invited me here tonight. I locked confident eyes with my defeated father, the blusterhead, utterly drained from his confident posture. He literally looked like what he was, an aging, pathetic man whose corporate empire was crumbling beneath his imported Italian leather shoes. The grand ballroom with its expensive crystal chandeliers and imported floral arrangements suddenly felt like a beautifully decorated courtroom, and I was the prosecution. The tension-filled air was thick with the sharp scent of expensive imported perfume, and sudden, sharp fear. Terrified waiters stood frozen against the grand walls, holding silver trays of expensive hors d'oeuvre that nobody would ever eat. You highly arrogantly thought you could confidently summon me to this highly pathetic anniversary masquerade and bully me into blindly signing over the massive Aspen cabin deed. I said, my steady voice effortlessly across the absolute silent elite ballroom. You arrogantly sent Penelope to play the fake loving sister. You arrogantly sent Catherine to play the stern authoritative matriarch. You arrogantly let Terence threaten me with physical intimidation. All of it was a desperate, uncoordinated scramble to secure the only unencumbered real estate asset this pathetic family has left. Penelope wiped her ruined expensive mascara, her contorted face twisting into an bitter sneer. She stamped her foot again, the heel of her expensive designer shoe cracking sharply against the polished marble floor. It is an important family property. We urgently wanted to build a lucrative wellness retreat. You are just maliciously spinning wild conspiracies to make yourself look important and maliciously destroy my special night. I ignored her. A lucrative wellness retreat, I scoffed, keeping my confident gaze fixed on my humiliated father. A beautiful lie for the gullible elite country club set. But numbers do not care about your fake social standing, Dad. Numbers do not care about your carefully curated public image. Numbers only tell the undeniable truth. I confidently picked up my highly sleek digital tablet directly from the polished cocktail table. With a quick, decisive swipe of my manicured finger, the complex spreadsheet detailing Terran's corporate embezzlement vanished from the media screen. It was instantly replaced by a pristine redacted legal document bearing the verified seal of the largest commercial bank in the state. The highly bold, bright red heavy letters directly across the heavy top clearly read, "An order of deft and intent to foreclose." A fresh wave of panicked gasps erupted from the elite crowd. The powerful corporate partners and wealthy elite investors who had been casually sipping vintage champagne only short minutes ago were now openly staring at the screen in undeniable horror. Panicked whispers broke out like a wildfire. The curated facade of the great Richard Vance was being publicly dismantled, brick by brick, in front of his most important peers. Elite people who had invested millions alongside him were physically backing away, desperately putting distance between themselves and the sinking corporate ship. "Your corporate company is bleeding cash," I clearly announced, walking slowly back toward the center of the silent room. My sensible low heels clicked rhythmically on the polished floor.